Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and today I'm coming to you with a type of video I haven't made in quite some time, and that is a From the Vault video, a video where I show off a gun from my personal collection. And the gun you see in front of you is one of my latest SBR builds. Yes, I finally got a tax stamp back from the ATF, so I was able to build this thing out. And what you see is a clone of a Colt Model 630, otherwise known as a GAU-5A/A. And essentially, it's the Colt Commando, but in the Air Force configuration. There's a couple of things that they didn't want as compared to the Army version. And so this is all made from Brownells parts. Now, this was not part of the Brownells retro rifle series. You guys know that for a while they were making a bunch of really cool retro rifles of the M16A1, the XM177E2, and so forth. And I always wanted one, and I passed on them, and then they discontinued them. Well, one day I was at a gun store. In fact, it was my gun range, and they had a lower receiver from the Brownells Retro series on sale. That's all it was the lower receiver. So I picked it up. It was for a good deal, and I thought to myself, well, you know, maybe I need to clone something. Maybe I could find the parts. And I started to do a little search. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to build the gun I originally wanted, which was the XM177E2. But going on Gunbroker, I was able to find a Colt 601 upper receiver, and this is a Brownells Retro as well, so it does not have the forward assist, nor does it have the shell deflector. And I started looking at what other Colt models were around during that era. And it turned out the Colt Model 630 kind of fit this bill perfectly. But let me adjust the camera. We're going to go over everything that's on this rifle because I did a lot of research on this, and it looks like the GAU-5A/A, yeah, it's a long name, actually went through a couple of different versions over time. And although this did not start out as a perfect clone, well, based on my research, it's pretty darn close. And it has some things that were indicative of the early years, some that were indicative of the later years, but that doesn't mean it's an incorrect clone because it turns out that as the Air Force upgraded the rifle, well, they kept some of the older things on some of the rifles and upgraded the newer parts, so this really is a pretty cool rifle, and I think cloned out pretty well. But let me adjust that camera. Let's go over everything that's on this rifle so I can show it off to you. Alright, so here's the rifle that I said I built mainly out of Brownells parts. I think there is only one thing on this firearm that is not stock Brownells, but I think it actually completes the rifle a little bit more, and we'll go over that. So this is kind of a geeky video where I show you all the parts and what I cloned and my information that I gained through investigation. So let's start off with the lower receiver because that is the part that I purchased first. I have an A1 grip, which is clone correct. I also have a two-position buffer tube on this. Now the stock here is a Brownells version. This is in polymer. The originals would have been made out of aluminum. So that's a little bit different, but it does have the correct look. I also threw on one of these retro Brownells magazines. Now the later ones would have used a standard 30-round magazine or kind of a slick slide magazine. The Brownells offered these for a while with their retro builds. This is the waffle style, which was early in the AR-15 run. So just because it's a retro magazine, I thought that I would go with that. Everything else in this lower is stock Brownells and part of their retro line. So now when it comes to the upper receiver, and by the way, I should mention both of these are anodized in that early gray color versus the more modern black color. The upper receiver here is a Colt 601 style, so it does not have the forward assist or the shell deflector, and this would have been indicative of the very early AR-15s. However, there was a branch of the service that did not like the forward assist, and you guys know the battle of the forward assist. Is it good? Is it useful? And we're not here to debate that today, but the Air Force never thought it was needed. So when they ordered their Colt Commandos with an 11.5-inch barrel, they did not want the forward assist. So having this upper receiver on this M16 lower is correct when it comes to this this build. Now, some of the early GAU-5A/5s had the lowers with the partial fencing. This one has the full fencing, which is like the ones in the later series, but you would find ones that had both early parts and older parts. So that is the upper receiver that I have. Now, there is one thing that I was not able to discover when it came to my research on this gun, is even though it had a slick side upper receiver, I don't know what type of bolt carrier they used. I do know that they were phosphate finished. However, I'm not 100% sure if they had the serrations for the forward assist. So I know the original 601s did not. They were slick side, but to find a bolt carrier without those serrations is almost impossible. The bolt carrier that I have in this gun does have the serrations on it. So you can see that right there. I also have the proper A1 style dust cover on it. Now, one thing that is not clone correct, but I did want to put on this, is I have a Colt 601 style charging handle. So this is the very small ones that would have been used in the very early AR-15 production. It's made by Brownells. I just wanted it because it's cool and different. But the original ones would have had a stock kind of modern AR-15 size charging handle on it, but that's something that I wanted to put on it personally. I also bought one of the Brownells retro scopes, and these are made in the same factory that the original Colts were, and they have the carry handle attachment point, so it's the same as you would have gotten back in the 1970s. Also, because it is an A1 style upper receiver, you have the A1 style sights as well. Now let's go to the front of this gun. The handguard I have on this is a 6-hole single heat shield handguard, which is correct to the 1970s. Modern handguards have 2 heat shields and have a 7th hole. This is the only part that I was able to purchase from another company, and I bought it from Retro Rifles. And so this is the narrow CAR-15 style handguard with the correct, as I said, 6-hole vents versus the 7-hole vents. The delta ring on this is flat, which is just like the early ARs. Now, when I find pictures of this particular rifle, especially in the late 1980s or early 90s, and by the way, this rifle was used by the Air Force all the way up until Operation Desert Storm. The later ones do have the slanted delta ring, which is more modern, but some of them still had the original flat one. So it just kind of depended on if the guns were upgraded or not. The guns all had an 11.5-inch barrel. The originals were in 1 12 twist. This particular barrel is in 1 7. And this is one thing I was kind of upset about, because Brownells does offer a 1 12 twist barrel. However, I was only able to get the 1 7. So I went ahead and went with it, and then I discovered in 1982, when the military introduced the M855 ammo, they actually rebarreled all of these rifles, including the GAU-5A/A to 1 7 twist barrels. So that is correct to this gun, especially when it comes to the later years. And then here on the front, I have the moderator. Now, this is not a real moderator. This is the Brownells reproduction, so it's pretty much just like a gigantic flash hider, but the originals had little tiny baffles in them, and the ATF technically considers them silencers because they diminish the report of the weapon. It does not make them hearing safe. Essentially, it turns an 11.5-inch barrel into the sound of pretty much a 20-inch barrel, but its main purpose was to add resistance of the airflow so you would have better reliable cycling of the gun. It was not designed to silence the weapon, but unfortunately the ATF calls them silencers. You can buy reproduction ones, and I thought about that, but they're about $300 to $400 plus the $200 tax stamp. I was like, it's not worth it. So I decided to go with just the Brownells reproduction of the one that's just hollow in here, so it's like a gigantic flash hider. It also does have the grenade ring. Now, these were on a lot of the early rifles, and they eventually went over to the A2 style birdcage. However, I have found pictures from Operation Desert Storm of Air Force personnel carrying these rifles with the moderators on them. So there's aspects of this gun, as I said, that are indicative of the early models, and some of them that are indicative of the later models, but the Air Force interchanged them throughout their production. So there you go, my clone of the Colt Model 630, otherwise known as the GAU-5A/A. What a cool build. I'm really happy with how this thing turned out, especially because it's a Brownells retro rifle that Brownells actually never made and put in their catalog. I just built it from the available parts. So what do you guys think? Do you like it? It's definitely different. It has that cool retro look. I'm really happy with how this thing turns out. So another From the Vault video. So let me know what you think about my build in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.